we go. Yep, much better. Now I got too much audio because I was listening to it on YouTube. Um, yeah, I thought that might happen. Just every time Stream Deck sends an update, it goes poof. Anyway, it's just me today. As I was saying, no Greg. He's doing stuff, so he's not available. So just me. But good morning, Dominic, because you're here. And I'm sure other people are here too. But in fact, I know there are. But hey, good morning, everybody. Got a couple things to go through today, which would be great. The first things first, though. Let's start here. Thank you to all of our wonderful patrons, everybody on this list. We appreciate you guys. You make the wheels go round. The Patreon comes with Discord benefits and the Patreon live stream. For one, you can check it out at patreon.com/3dmakeit, or you can check out everything at www.3dmakeit.ca. If you join Patreon, like I said, there's a couple tiers, but all the tiers have access to the Discord. So, yeah, we appreciate all you guys, and thank you for helping us along. Oh, nope. See, Greg's not here. I'm too used to pushing that button. It'll happen. So, some big stuff today. It's not huge, but it is actually. As we know, Bamboo Lab printers, so like the X1, P1 series and the A series, and even the slicers are all kind of like a closed source infrastructure, right? Like they're not what the community generally would gravitate towards, because as recent surveys actually have shown, people really like open source stuff when it comes to 3D printing, and that's because I think we're used to open source when it comes to 3D printing, right? We want to be able, lots of people, not everybody, but lots of people want full access so that they can change firmware, so that they can upgrade their machine, make changes, and not really have to worry about ramifications from a manufacturer. So that's a double-edged sword, and it has a couple connotations. So when we look at Bamboo Labs as an example versus a Creality as example, Creality has always been, especially in their Ender line since Naomi Wu got involved, have always been open sourced, and meaning the frame, the platform, everything was available for you to view. Right? You could go down and flash firmware onto their controller without worrying about much. The only caveat is the actual mechanical parts were still covered. So like if you flashed firmware and something broke, Creality would still help you out. So send you a stepper motor or something like that. Obviously there is limits to their benevolence, but the basic stuff was still covered. Bamboo Lab right now has a hard line in that if you use their stuff and you try to modify their stuff, then they won't cover a warranty, but they do allow you to root and flash firmware now. So they're kind of meeting the community halfway now. Why all the talk about closed versus open ecosystems in the open source sense? Well, this week, maybe last 8 days, we've seen a couple things come out for Bamboo, specifically Bamboo printers. One is the A1 is back, so that doesn't really have anything to do with open sourcing, but the A1 is back. So the A1, if you didn't know, is the recalled one. It's the bed slinger. Bed slinger was definitely recalled. So when you, like, if you had one, they could catch fire. That was the thing. They used like a faulty cable on the heating bed, and from what I understand, it was like the cable that they used was actually from like a desktop printer, and so it didn't work so well. So they tried, recalls to fix that and send out the kit. So that's done. It's great. Day one is back. The open source part, however, is E3D have released another nozzle for the Bamboo Lab. The nozzle itself is their Obsidian X or Obsidian series hot ends. So there's hard end, right? And you can still print the same material that you would with the stock bamboo hot ends, the hardened steel, but it's E3D's version. It actually comes as one whole piece. So let me let's see if I pushed the button right. I did it. So this is kind of what it looks like. So you can see that it comes in 0.4, 0.6. So those are your options, and for better or for worse, really. It does have the 2 series on here, so you can see that it does support X1 and it does support P1S. Just a little bit different connector on them, but it does still have the same kind of form factor, maybe slightly smaller that the bamboo had, but the heating, ducting, and the heat break and dissipators are all the same, and that's because it has to be. The interesting thing about when you put new hot ends on your Bamboo Lab printers is that even though you can put the hot ends on now, which is great, congratulations to the manufacturers who are making these things. Even though you can put the hot ends on these things, there's actually no way that you could actually go back in and change certain things, right? You can't update the firmware for a new hot end or a nozzle, right? So you can't do in firmware calculations for things like flow rate and perhaps extrusions. That's all locked behind Bamboo Lab. Now I think if you were to click all the scary buttons and actually root the firmware, put the other firmware on the X series, you do gain access to some of those features. But there's this one, and then the other one that did come out, and Dominic mentioned it, was it's a split hot end. The company that made it is Swiss, not Micro Swiss. So they were at Rocky, I think it was Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Festival. So this hot end, it looks very similar. I'm just trying to see if I can find a good image of it. But basically what they do is they split the heater core cartridge, the base to make it to make the nozzle change in less than 6 seconds. Just uno momento, por favor. I will find such a thing. I'm trying to remember who I saw it on very recently, because as you know, when you have a YouTube channel, you watch other YouTube channels incessantly. It's interesting. There's lots of neat stuff that came out of Rocky Mountain Rep Rap, but there's also stuff that just kind of like popped up. And for example, like what was it? Was it Lulzbot? They released their mini right after the show, but they didn't really like have any big announcement. They're just like, hey, here it is. And other people, like we talked about the Chameleon hot end, and there's actually bigger companies too that used it as a release platform, but they used that as a platform to like, hey, guess what's here? Let's see if we can find right there. I found it, guys. There we go. So this is kind of let's go back to the screen share. We'll go full screen and then this there. So this is what it looks like. This is on CNC Kitchen's channel if you want to go check out like the full video review of it. But the company name is Swiss. Um, and basically what they do is they split this heater core down, and the thermistor and the heater cartridge live on this side of the hot end, and then the other one just kind of closes in and they clamp together to make one continuous hot end and like a heating zone. Now the cool thing is this particular hot nozzle, so this piece here being one piece, you can just grab the end. I think you turn it like once. From what I remember, you turn it once and you can pull it out and pop a new one in. That's great. Right now they are looking at just doing brass nozzles, but they are going to be doing a hardened steel or like a obsidian or something similar, right? Won't be called obsidian. But let's see here. So you could see the mounting here. So like butterfly's closed, and then you just put the sock on with the metal piece underneath, and then it extrudes. And it looks like right now the form factor is definitely bamboo orientated, which is fine, right? It would be interesting to see if any company actually comes out for like other, like, so we had Microswiss come out for K1 series, which is great, and I think that we'll talk about that in a second, but I think that would be a good idea. Biggest advantage, Dominic said it too, is no tools. This is just literally you pull off the socket, pops apart, use your fingers, you turn it, you put it back. Kind of like the Revo. People people at the show are like, oh, you can do this, but we do it better because the Revo is 10 turns instead of one turn, and you're like, oh, big wow. I think toolless nozzle changing is a great idea, and I'm glad it's here. If you ever had the problem where you were trying to like torque the nozzle against the throat and it wasn't quite right, it started leaking, that this kind of gets rid of that stuff too. So that's kind of the obsidian and the Swiss splitting kind of in a nutshell. And yes, I agree, counting turns is easier. If you look at nozzles like the unicorn was supposed to be, it was supposed to just be like a quick boop and a push back in. If you don't know, unicorn's the one on the K1C series. So I guess this is a good transition, I suppose, into the next topic. So we kind of talked about bamboo, their stuff's back, but I want to talk about is 3D. I'll talk right when I talk about it. Sorry, guys. Is 3D printing finally actually accessible? So, is 3D printing something that anybody can sit down in front of now, whether or not they understand how the printer works, right? Or how the software works necessarily? Is 3D printing something anybody can do? And there's been tools in the past that have helped. So if a person wasn't necessarily well versed in technology, would they be able to 3D print, say, 6 years ago? Probably not. The first little sorry, I'm gonna make noise. Just gonna mute my mic for a second. Noise has been brought, and now I can drink this delicious drink. So, where we left off 6 years ago, I don't think it was quite accessible yet. I've been 3D printing since roughly like 2015 in there, so almost 10 years, and I've seen this change and this shift going through the community, and the community where it started out as a community. We were all learning together. We were all in it together. We were all doing it together. And this is one of the big changes and shifts is the community now is some pretty toxic Facebook groups that people can't access. If you're lucky, you get on a group, a good Discord, and you got, you share the laughs, the good times. Still, you can share help tips. If you're lucky, those Discords are out there. Find them. Ours is like that. There's very much a zero um, zero tolerance for rudeness. However, we've never had that issue. Our community is great. Um, so yay community on our side. The thing with 3D printing though is you had tools come along like AstroPrint where you didn't really have to know how slicing worked. You could find a thing from Thingiverse and then just say, hey, print this, and it would run it through the cloud and just send it to your printer, which is great. Except it still required somebody that knew how to like set all that up. You needed somebody that could either like buy the pie, get it set up on your network, or set it up from scratch and get it set up on your network, right? And so that was the issue going like with, let's say, software for a while, is you had printers that became capable. So I'm thinking around the CR10 launch, and then the many clones that followed. Printers started to become something easier to put together, and there was less involvement in fiddling, right? From the first kits, right? In the first rep wrap, we had basically what was like a Prusa, but it was not Prusa, but like it had the same frame and the linear rods. And then you had to do it in a kit, and this kit would take you a weekend to build, right? Which was a really daunting process. Then come along CR10. I don't say Enders, I say CR10, because that was CR10S, CR10. That was 4 screws in the bottom, right? Lots of people, all you had to do is lift the gantry, put 4 screws in, you were there. Your printer was assemble and easier to put together now. Then we went kind of backwards, but not, with the Ender 3, which was a kit. And I will always argue that the Ender 3 is a kit that is well thought out. They put the base together for you. You might have to make sure that that's leveled, but it was out, right? So we had an Ender 3, we had a CR10S. Ender 3 isn't super difficult, but the thing that really is hard, and I think kept it away from being 100% accessible, is like the software. When we first started 3D printing, and this channel is a testament to that too, if you go back to the first videos. Dominic just says it's like riding a bike. You don't need to build one, but you still have to be able to fix that flat. Absolutely, right? Basic troubleshooting skills were required. But when this channel first started, and this is software driven now, we made slicer videos. We made good slicer videos. We made slicer videos that showed you how to like add custom printers, and lots of channels to base slicer videos on, hey, this is the best slicer and slicer profile for printer X or whatever, right? You can think of Chap as an example, right? He had lots of videos. His slicer profiles were available for Kira on his webpage. I think it's Patreon now. Don't quote me on that. But ours is also on our on the website too. And Pierre brings up the other ones too. Our firmware videos, which there's a Clipper one coming, which will be the 200th, I've been informed, 200th video that we've released on YouTube. So stay tuned for that one up next Friday. It will release. And then we will have a Clipper video as well. And I have actually something to talk about in that vein too. But I think we had this software gap and we had this hardware gap, right? And you needed them both to meet in the middle for printing to be accessible. And I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and also good morning, Pierre. Sorry, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way to actually close a gap is to sell a product. Now, the gap I'm talking about is the accessibility gap, right? Everybody should be able to print. And the way that we can move forward with that right now is to sell a product that's 100% ecosystem controlled, which is not open source. Generally, it can be, but generally speaking, we have what a company like Bamboo Lab did. They release something, and that something can come out of a box, and then that something tells me to download an app on my phone, and then I download the app on my phone, and all these wonderful models come up from their ecosystem, their maker, and then I click it, and then it just goes, "Do you want to print it?" I go, "Yeah." Right now, we've had people try this before, like with My Mini Factory, but let's be frank about My Mini Factory. It's a great source for models, but it's a great source for models for like board games, right? Like it has a lot of minis and stuff. So now firmware, I'm just gonna like jump back and forth now between the two, open and closed. When we talk about firmware, right now we have Clipper and we have Marlin. And in my humble opinion, right now Clipper is running better. However, they're both good firmwares. Don't run out and change Clipper if your stuff's working. You use Marlin still, it's fine. But firmware was another big part of the thing that we had to modify in our printers. When we think back to 2016, printers still didn't come with default safety settings on, and you had to learn how to actually modify it and flash a bootloader or Android Studio and then VS Code. You had to learn all these tools so that you could fix the printer. Now fast forward, and I'm using Bamboo Labs as the example here, guys. I'm not using them as like the pedestal example, but they do a lot of things right that make a lot of people mad for accessibility. So you can take these printers now. So I'm going to say Bamboo Lab, right? We talked about, you take it out of the box, you can print. The other one that's very close to it, and there's clones coming. Actually, there's already clones here, but the K1 series from Creality and the K2, when it releases, are also those printers. So I had the opportunity of using a K1, and I still do. It's not in my house, right? I have a Bamboo Lab here, but these printers, you pop them right out of the box, and they print. Right? You're printing. Like, there's no let's set bed level, let's manually turn these knobs, let's go to this website, find this model. No. They both have prints on the SD cards that work, which is not outlandish for a printer to come with, but the difference is when you turn the power on, it goes, "Hey, do you want me to set up? I really want to set up." You go, "Yeah, okay, set yourself up." And it makes funny buzzing noises while it checks all of those things. And we're going to talk about the buzzing noises in a minute here too. But it goes through all the steps. It makes the printer print. And then lo and behold, and this is the real mind-blowing thing for a lot of people, and it happened at my work this week when the K1 was running. It prints, and it prints perfectly. It prints fast, right? Benchy boats in 15 minutes. Do they look great? There's a few issues, but usually they're fine. But it's mesmerizing to think that this is where we've gotten to. And so we can just open the box and print. Both Bamboo Labs and Creality, Creality has Creality Slicer. Creality has its own ecosystem. If you dare. Bamboo Labs has a better ecosystem for integrating model finding and printing. Creality has an app, but a lot of people don't trust it. Now, Pierre mentioned the Prusa XL5 heads, and yeah, so Prusa has released their Prusa XL, and you can get it with one head or up to 5, right? You can choose when you want to add the heads and stuff. The Prusa XL is around last time I checked 3,000 something, 3,900. Let me let me double check. Um, it is 2 grand USD, so that would be like 24 for me. Um, now, um, here's 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 where the big shift is if you want somebody to be able to understand and use the system right away, closed source, and closed source isn't quite the right term, but an ecosystem is always easier, right? It's easier for me to sell you the whole car than me going, okay. And they tried this, what company was it? BMW, maybe? Don't quote me. But like, you sold you a car and then they go, oh, you want your heated chairs to work? That's a license. You have to actually pay $20 a month for your heated chairs to work. Oh, you want that satellite radio to work? You gotta shell out more money because that's a different system, right? Where um all of those parts together, when you get it as the package to the consumer, just seems easier. Held says, hey, there's nothing wrong with package deal, closed source, as long as it works, but literally limits your opinion. Some like that, some hate that. In my view, open source is better. And Held, I agree. I like open source. However, however, I also appreciate the viewpoint from closed source. Um, Here's the thing: if a system is available and accessible and easy for me to use, and it costs me about the same, right? I'm going to use probably the one that's easiest. Now that being said, there was no easiest, and that's why we have firmware videos and slicer videos and controller videos and all that stuff. And now we're getting to a point where it can be easier. Is it for me? I have one because eventually the AMS was just a thing that we decided we wanted to use at my house here. My wife makes a lot of crafts and stuff. We got some cool stuff to show about that in a minute as well. But yes, closed ecosystems tend to be more expensive. However, I'll say 3 letters: P1S, P1P. Those printers are the same price, especially the P1P. It dips down into kind of like that area of the higher end enders, those the Ender 3KE or the Ender 3V3 Plus. Like we're getting to a point where $1,000, 800 to 1,000 is kind of the norm, and Bamboo Lab is aggressively hitting that price point. Where Prusa XL, as we talked about, and it fits right in, is a bit more. It's a bit more for Prusa XL, and is that a bad thing? No. Is Prusa XL closed source or open sourced? Well, it's mostly open source, right? So if I got a 5, if I got a 5 tool changer Prusa, that was assembled out of the box, right? Just pull it right out of the box. It's now $4,000. But you do get some of those advantages of the open platform and the open system and IDEX. Oh, and tool changing, right? And that's always been 2 paths. But I'm not saying, so to be clear, I'm not saying open source is better than a closed ecosystem. I'm just saying closed ecosystems have now made 3D printing truly accessible. When you can go buy a printer for 500, now I'm talking Canadian dollars, so wherever you are, I guess that's 329 American. There's a lot of people know that conversion. But when you can buy a printer for $500 that has an AMS or color changing system on it, and it's closed source and it just prints, right? $500. That's right in there with all those, with all of the kind of Ender clone budgety kitty things, right? And it's a, you take it out of the box and you print, and that does exist. It's the A1 Mini by Bamboo Labs, and it comes with the AMS, right? But again, I'm not saying they're better. I'm just saying it's more accessible. So I'm excited to see what 2024 has to bring for accessibility, especially. And I think you could, and I mean, throw it in the comments if you think, if you don't like this statement. I don't think that an open platform necessarily needs to be hard. I think that Creality is really close to having like this almost open platform that can just run. And honestly, the slicer for Creality and Bamboo, but we're talking Creality right now, is good. You just drop your image in or your STL and you hit slice, and then you hit one click print, and then it prints. No fuss, no muss. Right? It's just there. But I like that comment. And I'm very much the same. I like the idea of fixing stuff if it breaks. Or change stuff if I need. But Bamboo as a service and support actually works in my experience, so I'm happy. And yes, that's why I won't get rid of my other printers, and that's why I'm still ordering, parts and stuff. I like to play with the electronics, right? I like to do the things and the troubleshooting on a printer. But I know from like an outside standpoint, so like I'll go to talk to my wife for a second. Sometimes it's like, hey, I need this printed, but it's hard to explain, like, oh, I can't print that right now because I have to fix this, where we could always have this machine that's going, and if it breaks, it's just like a module. We looked at the hot end before, the new E3D for the Bamboo Lab, the Obsidian, and there looks like 85 euros, or maybe that's Great Britain pounds. Anyway, the actual Bamboo Lab stuff costs about $50 to replace that nozzle, right? So that's not outrageous, because when you replace that Bamboo Lab thing for the $50, it's like the whole piece. But we're getting into a territory that cars made it to, right? No longer do you have to know, like a mechanic would know, say 30 years ago, by sitting in your car just listening, that something wasn't right? Like, oh, the idling's a little rough here. I can hear that. Whereas now it's plug the thing into the car, the computer tells you what's wrong, and maybe 50% of the times it's right. So it takes that tinkering out, and I'm 100% on your side, Helge. 100%. The accessibility though is now there, and I think that's one thing that I really wanted to take away from this topic is we are now in a point where it's starting to be accessible, right? You could give this to a friend who has no idea, and you're not going to be the contact point anymore for like the repair questions and that stuff, because they have a printer that is good enough to function on its own. So big topic. Thanks for riding the wave with me. But yeah, so the next kind of thing that I want to talk about is exciting for me. It only took, like I said, about 10 years, and I finally picked a filament dryer. I've been looking at them, and like, we know the arc of filament dryers, right? Like, it started with you made your own, and then you had Fill-A-Dry that made a food dehydrator into a filament dehydrator and then sold it, which is, you know, it's not bad. It worked. It's great. Then they were really the show for a while. But the one that I picked, the one that won the kind of like the nod, I guess, is it's I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, is the S4 by Sunlu. So I don't know. Yeah, this is their website. Good. Hey Gary, morning. So this is it. Finally, right? Like it only took 10 years, but we did it. So this is what I settled on. It's the S4 filament dryer. You can put 4 spools in it. It has fans that work like a convection oven. Wow, I talk really good right now. And then it has like a hold mode as well. Yeah, I was going to talk about that one. So Polymaker has like, I think they call it the Poly Dry, don't they? I think that's what it's called. Polymaker Poly Dry. Dry? Yeah. So like the Polymaker Poly Dry is was on the list. Like it was one of the 2. Let's see if we can find might do it over here so that it's not craning my neck. But that's the one I went for, is the S4. Now the Polymaker Poly Dry is cool, but the reason we went for the S4 is because you can do 4 spools at once. You can print from all 4 channels, which is just great. Yeah, here it is. So like the ability to dry 4 and then the ability to print 4 was intriguing, and that's kind of what I went. Is the filament dryer heating, and if it does it affect the printing process? So this filament dryer is heated. It does it say on the webpage? It has a big old heater in it. It's a 320 watt heater. So it will dry. The good thing about this system is it's controlled, which means you can keep it underneath the bed transition point of the filament. The filament won't deform. All that will happen is it will either rejuvenate your filament that is kind of no good anymore, right? It's brittle, it snaps, that stuff. Generally not a problem for me down here because we live very close to the mountains in the desert. However, this one does dry like my pet cheese, and that's and old PLAs. That's the great thing about it. But it won't affect printing quality because it won't actually act upon like those temperatures that are higher to damage the filament. So like if you were to take let's just pop this back. If you were to take a roll of filament and pop it in an oven, that like one, your oven isn't actually controlled in a manner that is stable enough for that. So like you could set it to 60, but it's going to actually go like above and below. Now the above and below depends on how good your oven is, but an oven isn't designed for that. And that's where you see people like melt spools or deform filament. And that's where the crux is. That's exactly where the damage happens to filament, and then the print quality will be affected. But the idea of a dryer like that and other commercial dryers like this one, here's the filler dry, or the poly dry, sorry, from Polymaker. So what it is it's a normal dry box. So there's nothing special about the box on top. You can throw some desiccant in it, and then like it would just keep your filament dry just with the desiccant. However, the magic sauce is underneath. You can see there's a heater underneath, and this blows and circulates the hot air to dry the filament. Now, I encourage you, if you're curious about the whole drying process, CNC Kitchen has a really good video on drying filament. But basically, what it comes, yeah, you don't want it to be hot spaghetti. Nope. And that's what these avoid, right? These are controlled environments that you can keep well below the point of having any trouble. And then you can also see the humidity and the airflow and yeah, so like you wouldn't per se like want to put, say, like a roll of PLA in with a roll of like PETG and try to dry both at once, because they have different transition temperatures, which means to dry PETG, you're going to have the temperature hotter. And if you have the temperature hotter, that's enough to actually start deforming and moving that PLA into a non-printable state. Some people get lucky, but yeah, you don't want to overheat it. Too much time is bad. I don't know. It might make biscuits just real slow. Real slow drop biscuits in your filament dehydrator. But Poly Dryer is a newer one. There's a really good mod for it where you can actually put two of the dry boxes onto one of the dryers that a fellow make. I don't remember his name, but it is out there. It's on printables. So if you're looking at this, you could do two at a time. The reason, again, I went with this guy is because you can do four at a time. And I do have lots of PETG, lots of ABS, and lots of PLA that can go in there, get dried, back in the bags with the desiccant, and be good for a while. The other thing it can do is actually dry your desiccant. So that'll be great. We can recharge our desiccant packs. The other advantage to using like a system like this, and I said it before, is printing from it. So there's two types of moisture filaments can gather. Filaments can gather moisture on the outside, and filaments can also gather. See, I pushed all the buttons. That one's fine. But filament gathers on the outside of a filament, and that surface moisture, that's not a problem. That surface moisture will go away when it gets to the nozzle. It's actually not in the filament, so there's a good chance that even like hanging it up and feeding it through and that space is enough to like just evaporate that small amount of surface moisture. But filaments can absorb moisture too into the internal structure of the filament, and that's what we're trying to hit with the dryers, much more than the surface moisture. But obviously the surface moisture does play a little bit of a role, but not as bad as the internal stuff. And again, this one does have the ability to have an outlet on the side here, so you can send it out to a printer or four printers. They did have I don't know if it's on their website. I saw a picture of it that had it like surrounding four enders. I'm like, hey, that's neat. So a 3 kilogram spool, if you notice this picture right now, inside the internal chamber, you could see this giant spool in there, and it has like one on the core and sitting in the middle. So, how long in your dryer before use, or is it on the fly? So, great question. So a dryer works two ways. So like if you're just rejuvenating stuff like PLA and stuff, there is a timer on this dryer that knows for PLA. You could tell it PLA, and it'll turn on, and it'll be like usually 6 to 12 hours at the just under the bed transition. So in this case, it'll probably be around 50, and then that is dry. And so then I could take that filament out and then either print with it or put it back in like a dry bag, dry box. But the filaments like PETG a little bit, but nylon especially, you would put it in the dryer, let it dry, and then as you were printing on the fly, print from it. Now, the reason you do that with nylons especially is they're very hygroscopic. So it's like they just they look at fresh air and go, ooh, moisture. Yep. So the answer to the question is you should print some materials on the fly out of the box once they're dry. But like PLAs, you can just use the PLAs and dry it, take it out, put it back on the spool. I would say an open, like in my area, especially like an open package of PLA is probably good for about a year or better before you start to notice um, any issues. Now, I did have some stuff from the coast, out on the west coast, Vancouver, Victoria area of Canada. When I got it, you would think it would do better here, but no, it actually became very brittle within 3 or 4 days, and drying it was the only option if I ever wanted to print it again. So it's still sitting. I haven't used it for 2 years. I'm looking forward to trying. Um, Gary says he wants to try some nylon some days. There's another combat robot event in August. Yeah, print some nylon armor and get it out there. Um, the uh, the nylons, especially, I should say, are high grow. Pet Gs and Pet Ts have a bigger tendency um, than PLA, but they're not as bad as nylons. ASA, ABSs, they're kind of a little worse than and it's because of the kind of plastic they are, right? Like PLA is this crystalline-ish plastic that stacks in no particular order inside the filament, so it's not like a contiguous crystal, where the ABS and ASA are amorphous plastics, which means there's no crystals, but they're actually never in a state of being completely solid. So everything's always in motion, and it makes it easier for them to absorb plastic, or sorry, humidity from the air. So um I'm going to have another video coming out following the normal clipper video. um I'm just looking at the time. I'm like, ooh, I better move on to the last two things, otherwise I'll never have time to finish them. I've got an accelerometer from Big Tree Tech that I bought, that I will be doing a video on for Clipper to do the input shaping. It is the Big Tree Tech ADL 345. I did it, I think. It's a USB sensor. It comes with a Pi memory chip on it, so when you hook it up to your Raspberry Pi, it actually shows up as another control unit, and then you can attach it and unattach it to printers. I'm working out a way to rigidly attach it temporarily to like the Ender 3s and the CR10. And then I will have another one that statically and just forever goes on the other Core XY I have. But those videos will be coming to show you the accelerometer and Clipper, how to configure it, how to use it. So like I said, this week will just be the general Clipper video, how to get it going, how to get it started. Now the next one will be the accelerometer. Now, a question for people that are here, but before we have that question, I'm going to push this button. Bop. Thank you, everybody, for being our Patreons. Everybody in this is super important to us. Held to the top, thanks so much. If you want to check out the Patreon, be a member of the Discord, and get some of those access features to help, it's patreon.com/3dmakeit. And you can find us and all of our socials at www.3dmakeit.ca. And remember that if you need to get help, Patreon is the best way to actually get access to, one, our community, and two, Greg and David. And then the other thing would be share, like, subscribe, you know those things. Do those things. If you put a roll of Patchy in with 3 rolls of nylon in the box, will the nylon remove enough moisture to dry the Patchy? It's an interesting question. I'd love to try it. Maybe. The thing is a good box always has like a fan that will vent the air out of it too. So if you're looking for a drying system, make sure you're looking for one that can actually take the warm air and move it away. Because once the water evaporates, if you leave it in there and you forget to take it out, well, instead of a dry box, you've now made yourself a temporary wet box and it will just reabsorb. Now, there's one more thing that I want to touch on. I don't know if it's going to have enough time or the time that it deserves. And we will come back to it. But I'm going to talk about something. This is something any printer can do, okay? It's called Hueforge. Now, Hueforge is a how do you best describe it? It's an extension, I guess. It's the next logical iteration from making 3D printed lithophanes. But what it does is actually pretty amazing. I'm going to see if I can find this picture that I found beforehand, but I probably cleverly lost it. One sec. I will find it again. So what Hueforge is it basically takes an image and it makes it a 3D print. And I say that out loud and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Now, I don't know if any of you know of Hueforge or not, but let me show you a little bit of what it can look like here. So it's easy to say that it takes a picture and it lets you, print it. Easy statement. But this is what a Hueforge painting or printing, print, it is a painting, will look like. So you can see that it adds all these textures to the photo. It's blending, it's making colors. Any printer can do this. It utilizes M600 changing. So obviously if you have a tool changer or a Bamboo Lab, it will work better because you don't have to consistently change the filament all the time. But if you don't and you want to be by your printer waiting for that filament change, you can do it. So this is kind of the end result of what a Hueforge can look like. So what they do is they're using the same quality that lithophanes took advantage of, and that's the transparency of a filament to let other colors come through behind the filament with light. The terminology they use for it is transmission distance, but like I said, this is a heavy topic, but I will bring this one up here. So this is the actual software if you wanted to check it out. So this side, the right hand side is the picture. Like that's what I put in. The left hand side is the output. Now you can see at the bottom, the color gradient kind of goes from dark to lighter. So in the bottom left corner here, I have black, gray, a lighter gray, and then white. And then you can see like there's numbers underneath to give the intensity. The intensity changes with the sliders, but it gives you a general idea. So if I wanted to make this mountain, but I wanted to add some color to it, I could start by looking at the picture and see what I can transition to. And yes, it uses very thin layers. So up here in the top of this window, you could see like the layer height is 0.08 and the base layer is 0.16. Detail size is at 0.2. So we're using very thin layers, 0.08, to actually accomplish this. So like if I start to add some stuff, so my clouds look right. I've got this grayish up top here, but it's blended. So like if I start adding, let's say, color, so I can click down and drag colors onto the columns, and you can see how now it's changed it to more blue, which is okay. Now I wanted it to be more browny, so let's add some brown with this lighter shade. So now I'm mixing and blending the colors. You can see it mixed and blended the blue. So if I just pull this slider down, there's the blue and there's the mix of the brown that I added. And then I'll leave the white, I like the white in there because it gives it that nice shimmer on the roof. So the other color I might change or add would be this green, right? And if I want to add a column, I can just drag it beside. But buyer or person beware. If you do this, now you have 5 filaments in there. AMS has 4, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But I can actually transition through other colors now. You can see as I drag it up, it kind of lets me see that preview, and I can get closer to what I envisioned. And then I'm like, maybe the brown's too much. Let's pull the brown back a bit. And you can start to blend your picture to how you would like it. Maybe the black's too prevalent, or you want it a little more, maybe like there, right? So then you can start building your picture, and it doesn't take long to build a framed picture and get it close to what you envision. You can see it's not like CMKY or anything like that. It's you pick which colors you would like and you can blend them yourselves. This is really this area down here on the colors. The colors also have presets for like materials. So you can see like this is bamboo and all that stuff. Sunlu, Protopast, Polymaker, Polyterra. They have a lot of choices in there. And if you actually own a color, you can click it and then add it to basically a favorites up there. And then they do have the different kinds of materials as well. So it's kind of interesting. It will take a little bit of fiddling for you to get like, the exact feel of your picture. But you can go from that picture again to something like this. And there's lots of examples of these online, and lots of people are playing with it. Hueforge came out last year, but it was in like September-ish. Full disclosure, it costs a whole $18 to buy. And then that's for personal use. If you wanted to sell it, it's a little more. But the personal license is a lifetime license, so you never have to buy it again. I did hear in an interview that there may be a point one day where they're like, okay, it's on the next version, so you have to pay $18 again. And honestly, whatever. That's fine. I think that's more than fair. So you can buy it at personal lifetime license for $18 US. Or if you plan on selling stuff with it, they do have a lifetime license for professional, which is $250. So that might be something you wanted to think if you're going to take them to craft shows and that kind of stuff. But the licensing is there. It's easy to follow. $18 is cheap for a lifetime. There is a ton of good examples on their website. And if you wanted to try it before you buy it, search Hueforge on printables, and you will find they have some pre-made Hueforge things that you can print to see if it's for you. So I look forward to using it a lot. We're going to use it on that bamboo a lot. But yeah, and unfortunately we're not going to get to the last thing today, which actually addresses that comment, Gary. But $18 is cheap compared to what Fusion, SolidWorks, and Adobe want, and there's a few others we could add to that list. Thankfully, Fusion, I'm in the education system, and we qualify to use it for free. Sorry. But that being said, there's a really good option if you're just a hobbyist and you're not making IP for gain, right? So if you're not selling it if you're not going to sell what you're making as kind of trade secrets, then this other option, I've seen it pop up all over, but we'll have to maybe save it for next week. Dun dun dun. Just because we're at 11 o'clock. So Again, I want to thank everybody that came today. Thanks for hanging out on all the topics. We appreciate all the Patreons. We will be having a Patreon live stream, but I don't think it will be this next weekend, probably the weekend after. But yeah, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And yeah, I know, right? We might need a 2 hour stream. I can't because it's Mother's Day and I got a lot of other stuff to do. So, but thanks for coming. I'll catch you all next week. Join the Discord if you haven't, and we will see you around. So, thanks. Have a good one.